When faced with the question, give me a yes or no answer, did Donald Trump actually win the election? Here's what he had to say.
Can we just put this to bed so you don't have to be asked about this a million more times? Yes or no, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Whoever puts their hand on the Bible on January 20th every 4 years is the winner. And I don't think the election, and I've pointed out in that same quote, and I've said this.
Look at him. He's just like trying so desperately to be like, yes, Joe Biden won, while simultaneously being like, but it was like cheated and stolen.
When they changed the rules for COVID, I think that was wrong. I think some of those changes were unconstitutional. When they do mass mail ballots, I think that's wrong. I think ballot harvesting is wrong.
You guys want to know something crazy? I looked this up yesterday. In the state of Florida, which he is the governor of, which he won an election recently, the gubernatorial race happened. Are you ready for this? More than 82% of Florida's ballots were cast early or by mail. Brother, how is this any different than Marjorie Taylor Greene being like, the election was stolen? And then someone asks her, okay, but you were on the ballot too. Do you think like, you know, the election was stolen for you? She's like, no. Actually, I don't know. They're like, wait, what happened really? So you're saying that the election was stolen, there was so much cheating, but you won on that same ballot. Mass mail voting is wrong because it means the undesirables vote. I mean, he's trying to say that, but he is in the state that does mass mail voting.
On the same time, at the time after the election, they were talking about Maduro stealing votes on the voting machines or whatever, and none of those theories proved to be true. But here's the issue that I think is important for Republican voters to think about. Why did we have all those mail votes? Because of Trump turned the government over to Fauci. They embraced lockdowns. They did the CARES Act, which funded mail-in ballots across the country. Donald Trump signed that bill.
He's saying Donald Trump actually is a supporter of the provisions that caused him to lose, which again is infinitely more difficult an argument to make if you're also simultaneously running against him and saying that he lost the election. You're saying cheating happened and that's good. They cheated and that's good. I'm glad that they cheated and defeated Donald Trump. It makes no sense. It's so stupid. Like, if this is the tightrope that you have to walk on and this is the best you got, you're cooked. Is there a point where he might yell Trump is woke? He might. And that is so painfully Democrat. You guys, he is behaving exactly like Hillary Clinton. Democrats always try to triangulate and hit an avenue, an angle that is inherently center-right, okay? They always try to do this. It's the John Kerry Swift boat situation. It's the John Kerry is a veteran, George W. Bush never served dynamic. They have failed time and time again to outflank the Republicans from the right. They can't do that. Republicans own patriotism. And in that same way, you cannot outflank Donald Trump from the right unless you are charismatic enough and you have been able to capture that same audience's attention in the way that Donald Trump has been able to. If you can't do that, then no matter what you say, they're gonna look at you like you're a fucking clown.
And also with the censorship of the Hunter Biden, that was Donald Trump's FBI that was working with that. He didn't have control over his
you think you can outflank Trump on hating Hunter Biden? Like, are you out of your mind, dude? What are you doing? This is so... Dude, Ron DeSantis is literally a Democrat. Ron the Democrat. Oh my God, that's such a good... Dude, Trump needs to hire me. Trump, sir, Mr. President, please hire me, okay? I got you. Ron the Democrat. Ron DeSantis. He's Kamala Harris. He's Hillary Clinton. He is a fucking Democrat. He is. He behaves like a Democrat. This is so Elizabeth Warren in some respects. This is so Hillary Clinton with a lack of charisma. It's just so bad. That's why Democrats lose.
So me as the nominee, we will not let them run circles around us. If there is ballot, Florida, we ban ballot harvesting, right? I think that's what you should do. If there is ballot harvesting that's allowed and like...
He's still going. Brother, he is still going. He hasn't stopped. This is like 4-minute answer for a yes or no.
We're not going to fight with one hand tied behind our backs. And so I think all of those issues were very problematic. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump helped facilitate that whole set of circumstances.
Motherfucker even said problematic. It's done. Those issues are problematic.
You did not clearly answer that question. And if you can't give a yes or no on whether or not Trump lost, then how can...
Of course he lost.
Trump lost the 2020 election.
Of course.
Okay.
Joe Biden's the president.
Done. Wrong. Donald Trump is the president. Wrong. Get the fuck out of here. Saying wrong Desantis, little Rhonda, wrong again, Rhino wrong, Ron Democrat Desantis, little Rhonda. He's so tiny, folks. He's 5'0".
But what people in the media and elsewhere, they want to act like somehow this was just like the perfect election. And when you have mass ballot harvesting, Zuckerberg put hundreds of millions of dollars into nonprofits to send money to election offices and basically weaponize the election offices.
It's also like the lamest ways in which he's like attacking this point. Just like, oh, they're doing ballot harvesting. I promise. Shut up. What exactly is ballot harvesting? Is it just getting more people to vote? I don't get what the problem is with that. No, ballot harvesting is actually somewhat controversial method, but it's when you go and get big groups of voters and collect all of their votes and then dump it. Dump it as in like cast it. You pick someone else's ballots for them. Like you pick a major group of people's votes and then you vote on their behalf technically. It's not really, but yeah, exactly. It's basically when you go door to door to pick up absentee ballots that people have completed on their own but forgot to mail. Yeah, of course they still filled it out themselves. No. There have been instances, ironically, where ballot harvesting has actually been problematic, except famously it's happened, and you might be shocked to find out, with Republicans in North Carolina. So like where it turns into fraud, where they'll go to Democrat neighborhoods, pick up the ballots, and then dump them. Shocking, I know. They actually, as Michael from Pennsylvania is saying in the chat, is correct. They actually stole an election and got caught because the results were thrown out. The results were, the disparity was so insane that they were like, oh, there's a major discrepancy here. We need to look a little bit further into this. And then they realized, oh, they just like took a bunch of ballots and then dumped them, like from Democrat neighborhoods.
You've said that folks can use deadly force, that law enforcement can use deadly force, saying if cartels are trying to run product into this country, they're going to end up stone cold dead. How far might you take that method for preventing illegal crossings in general? Like under a DeSantis administration, would anyone crossing the border illegally potentially face deadly force from law enforcement?
It's similar to like if you're in the military. You have rules of engagement. Anyone that's hostile intent or a hostile act, which the cartels are, you would then engage with lethal force. I think these cartels are basically foreign terrorist organizations. They are responsible for killing more Americans on an annual basis than any other group or country throughout the entire world. And yet this is just happening, and it's happening in communities all across the United States. You can find these angel mothers who've lost children to fentanyl overdose in virtually any community in the United States. And it really hit me when I was down in Arizona. Most of the border doesn't have a wall, of course, but there was parts where there was a wall. And these guys are working on the wall. I'm like, what are you doing? They're like, we're repairing the hole. The cartels cut through the steel beams. So if you see that happening and they got the satchel of fentanyl strapped to their back, you use deadly force against them. You lay them.
He's literally, this is awesome. This is where Ron DeSantis openly states that if you are a military-aged male with a satchel and a baby, it's time to be murked at the border. I love that. I mean, his border policy is kill people who have a bag on them at the border. Let me explain something to you, okay? We know, and I'm not making this number up, this is the Department of Homeland Security statistics, that the overwhelming majority, more than 94%, I believe, of fentanyl trafficked into the United States do not come from fucking border crossings that with like a bunch of random people trying to come into the country. They come from regular ports of entry. They come from the ports, and they come from Americans going into Mexico and putting fucking shit ton of fentanyl into their cars and crossing the border that way. It's white people that are trafficking the fentanyl and other drugs into the United States of America. Okay? So remember that. It's crazy. It's crazy that it's like random fucking law-abiding, otherwise law-abiding abuelas are the ones who are actually trafficking fentanyl, or military-aged males with babies and satchels. Like, it's fucking bullshit. And then also, my favorite, it's police union chiefs. It's Deborah, okay? It's Barbara. They're trafficking the fucking fent. They're trafficking the drugs.
So we'll stop it. We will actually build a border wall. I mean, I think that, we have good experience of getting things done in Florida, so we will do that. But I think being willing to lean in against the cartels is going to be the critical element.
But to that point, I mean, you yourself were an advisor to Navy SEALs. You know how hard it is sometimes when it comes to rules of engagement, how to tell good guys from bad guys, especially when folks are crossing the border under cover of night. How do you discern if it's a child, a mother, or
obviously,
a cartel member?
If it's a child, I mean, you're not going to do that. But I mean, they have...
Right, but a pregnant mom in a baseball cap with a backpack
They have
versus...
indications.
Okay.
I mean, if you have people blowtorching through a border wall, that is not going to be, that's not
But as you mentioned, the wall isn't everywhere. How do you know you're using deadly force against the right people?
It's the same way you would do in any situation. Same way a police officer would know. Same way somebody operating in Iraq would know. These people in Iraq at the time, they all looked the same. You didn't know who had a bomb strapped to them, so those guys have to make judgments.
Just like you still need like a level of charisma to be able to be just openly talk about how psychotic your interests are in protecting the border. Like, you can't go on national television and be like, no, I want to fucking kill moms, okay? I want to kill moms that have backpacks on. It's fucking insane. He's like, no. It's vibes-based murder. If they got fucked vibes, we murder them. It's pretty simple. I like that he also said they all look the same. You can't be serious about it. It's weird. He's like, come on, we'll do a little racial profiling. Yeah, Iraq went so fucking well. Exactly. Famously, a success story, Iraq. What's the difference between military-aged male and a regular man? They're just introducing this term to propagandize the narrative. No, that's because Ron DeSantis is a JAG lawyer, right? His job in the Navy was literally to oversee misconduct. And a big part of that is creating boundaries around rules of engagement. That's precisely why he's saying military-aged male, which is a different way to say, like, oh, no, you can kill them. You can kill them because they're military-aged males. It's a way to like try to immediately post hoc, or even before you do it, justify and rationalize why you shot a person. He's JAG. Military-aged male was a term we use to justify kill on sight. The idea that like a military-aged male is an appropriate target, especially for fucking border crossing, is completely psychotic. The fuck do you mean? That distinction led to many Iraqi children being fucking shot, first and foremost, and then also rationalize the deaths of. And secondly, that was fucked up in Iraq even, but it's additionally fucked up on top of that in a way that like might even penetrate the American consciousness in a negative capacity when you consider it to be a fucking border crossing. That's insane. I just don't think that it would ever go through regardless. But
they're literally on an app coming illegally and signing up with our own government to get a court date. They get released in the interior of the country and then they come back. 2-3 years later? How many of them are actually going to show up for those court dates?
That's the regular Trump narrative, which is, of course, we know the number. It's 90%, which is why Trump plays fast and loose. He used to say, oh, they're never going to come. They would never show up. And then I think someone told him that they do actually show up. So he changed it to, you'd be an idiot if you showed up. Even if you show up, you're an idiot. Why would you show up to the court date? You're free. You're free to go. Like, yeah, I don't know. Maybe because they fucking think that, perhaps foolishly, the American legal system will offer them asylum as it states in the law. Kind of goes to show what kind of dude Trump is too. He's like, what do you mean? I just don't show up to my court case. I'm fine.
In this post-Dobbs era, do you believe that abortion is an issue that should just be dealt with on a state-by-state basis?
So I'm pro-life. I have a record of being promoting a culture of life in Florida, just like they've done in Iowa, just like they've done in South Carolina. Dobbs returned it to the political branches. I think the reality is that basically means the states are going to have primary control over it. I do think the federal government would have an interest in, say, preventing post-birth abortions or things that are really horrific. But you also have to understand, what Iowa's done is not what New Hampshire is going to do, and what Wisconsin will do is not what Texas is going to do.
So would you veto any sort of federal bill that tries to put a nationwide ban in place?
So we will be a pro-life president, and we will support pro-life policies. I would not allow what a lot of the left wants to do, which is to override pro-life protections throughout the country, all the way up really until the moment of birth in some instances, which I think is infanticide.
Well, actually, I got to push back on you on that because that's a misrepresentation.
White woman alert. Wee woo, wee woo. You just activated the one issue that she definitely cares about. She's about to push back on you, Rod. This is why the abortion conversation is so fucking devastating for the Republican Party's like electoral prospects, okay? Are you fucking kidding me? Where is it? Someone just said, I'd say it's just a woman in general issue. It's pretty important for us. My friend, you're failing to understand what I mean. 52% of white women voted for Donald Trump. That number will be significantly less this election cycle. That's what I'm talking about. You get it? You can sit there and fucking say whatever you want. Of course, it's an issue that impacts all people, not even just women. It's like, well, you know, men have daughters at the end of the day, right? I mean, if you have a consciousness, you don't want this kind of injustice to happen. But this is the one moment where you would have an otherwise conservative person go, no shot. And that's why it is such a major fuck up.
1.3% of abortions happen at 21 weeks or higher. There's no evidence of Democrats pushing for abortions up until...
Their view is that all the way up into that, yet there should not be any legal protections.
There is no indication of Democrats pushing for that.
Well, yes, they are. They've done it in California. They've done it in other states.
They have not instituted that policy.
Yeah, they have. They basically will say that they'll use like different ways to really have a wide exception for it.
It's extremely rare, 1.3%, and in those circumstances, they're typically extremely emotional decisions.
Well, no, I mean, I don't say that that's the norm.
Where was the spice with the military-aged male conversation? The pushback, which she did have for the border crossing, is nowhere near as passionate as this conversation. That's important for you to understand because that is a relatively conservative talking head in the media. If you got a relatively conservative talking head who's a white woman who's like, well, logistically speaking, maybe it would be difficult to kill everyone that crosses the fucking border that has a backpack on, but then it draws this level of ire when you say Democrats are trying to do post-birth abortion. That's why it's good to fucking, put federal restrictions on abortion at a time when abortion is criminalized as a consequence of the Roe v. Wade decision. You have the problem right in front of you. You are arriving at the issue that the Republican Party is facing right there. And the way he phrased it is cucked, yes, but it's also very close to the way Donald Trump is trying to phrase it, which is, oh, yeah, well, I did this because I wanted to have a conversation about abortions. It's like, bitch, there is no conversation about abortions. Trigger laws were immediately implemented. It criminalized abortion. There are women right now suing the fucking state of Texas because they can't get ectopic pregnancies to be medically treated due to the legitimate fears that doctors have. It's done. There's no conversation being had. There are victims. There are children that have been sexually assaulted that have to go to other states to get abortions. You can't do that in Ohio. You're done. You're done. There is no conversation at that point. So Donald Trump trying to massage his way into that narrative where on the one hand, he's claiming like, oh, well, I did so well with the abortion, didn't I, folks? And then simultaneously be like, but I did it for you so you can have a conversation about the abortion. No shot. That's a terrible way to message. It's probably Donald Trump's weakest way of communicating.
The FDA just approved over-the-counter birth control. Do you support widespread access to contraception, or do you think there should be some limits?
No. Contraception in Florida, our Department of Health, we provide about 100,000 people a year with access to contraception at no cost to them. And I think it should be available over the counter, and I think people should be able to have access to it.
In Florida, you signed a bill.
Why'd you let him get away with that? No. Does that mean Plan B? Does that mean an abortion pill? Or does that mean condoms? Because I think he means condoms. She's lasering him on this issue. It's the most important issue of the election because women like her are going to make a decision on whether they want to vote for the Republican Party to uphold white supremacy, or maybe not vote, or maybe vote for the Democratic Party because the Republican Party is openly taking away their rights. That's it. That's a huge deal, okay? That's a huge problem. He was literally lying. Amid abortion battle, Desantis vetoes birth control funding again. That's such an easy fact check. If only journalists had the capacity to engage in fact checking.
In terms of enforcement or limits on abortion, to what extent do you believe that women should be punished for violating an abortion ban?
Not at all. No, I don't think this is an issue about the woman. I think a lot of these women, are in very difficult circumstances. They don't get any support from a lot of the fathers. And a lot of them, the number one reason why women choose to have an abortion is because they're not getting support and they feel abandoned. Now in Florida, we've provided support and we put our money where our mouth is. But at the end of the day, I would not support any penalties on a woman.
Guys, this has always been the common Republican Party position. The only time they've stepped away from this is when Donald Trump accidentally said yes to a question in the 2016 election cycle. And it was like a massive ordeal when, in fact, of course, abortion criminalization harms women. And this actually directly harms women because it criminalizes it. It always does. But Republicans always turn around and say, oh, actually, we just want to, we want to criminalize it on the doctor side. Because you can't say you want fucking a random 14-year-old that was raped to go to jail. You can't openly say that. It's much easier to change the narrative and redirect the crosshairs to doctors. They're the evil doctors. They're the fucking nerds. You know what I mean?
Florida's new standards for teaching African-American history cause a lot of controversy. You have made education a really big part of your platform, both as governor and as a presidential candidate. So let's just talk about your take on these new standards. And the one sentence that's received the most backlash, I'll just read it to you. Instruction includes how slaves develop skills, which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. So let's just be clear. You believe this is an important topic that should be taught in schools?
So that means they develop skills in spite of slavery, not because of slavery. It was them showing resourcefulness and then using those skills once slavery ended. And the people that put those standards together were scholars of African American history. These were not political standards. Florida eliminated critical race theory because it's ideology and we want education, not indoctrination. When we did that, a lot of people were saying, oh, you don't want to teach about African American history. The bill actually required more robust standards. So that's how that working group came into being. So they had copious standards. I mean, just...
Dog, they're showing PragerU Kids videos in the state of Florida now in schools, okay? Suck my dick, robust educational standards. Like, making slavery out to be like an unpaid internship is not only ahistorical, but also insane.
Those standards were not political at all. The legislature didn't dictate any of that. Governor's office didn't dictate anything of that. These guys worked in a very professional manner. They produced those standards. There was public comment. This was all done in the public. They were being praised for what they did because of how thorough it was. And then Kamala Harris decided to come down.
It's like, wait, I don't get it. Like, every psychopath that I allowed to join the fucking signing document meeting said I was great. And then all of a sudden, other Americans found out about it, and they were like, oh, no, this is not great. I wonder what this spells for my electoral prospects. Let's not pontificate. Let's not think about this any further. All the psychopathic wingnuts who were involved in the crafting of this legislation sure liked it. People in the state of Florida who heard about it, who are really invested in psychotic, really liked it. But it seems like other people didn't really appreciate it. I wonder why.
And so I think that those scholars that did that, many of whom were black themselves, I think that they deserve to be defended on that.
But do you see how some folks might find that kind of language offensive? I mean, Tim Scott, who was a fellow Republican, said what slavery was about was separating families, about mutilating humans, even raping their wives. It was devastating. So I would hope that every person in our country, and certainly running for president, would appreciate that. People have bad days, he added. Sometimes they regret what they say, and we should ask them to clear.
I'm going to be honest. This is a very Trump-style controversy to be in, and he's not doing a good job. You're supposed to, in this situation, you're supposed to never back down, never surrender. What you're supposed to do is say, these guys are crazy. Some of those African Americans love slavery, believe me, and double down, and then find like every black person that will say you're not racist, and it's actually the Democrats that are racist for even saying this, and keep pumping that narrative over and over again. He's not even doing a good job of like good controversy for him. I could literally see Trump saying something like, what do you mean? Of course there were positives to slavery. Look at all the black people living here instead of Africa. Something like that. You know what I mean? I love all of my African Americans. I love that they live here. They love it too. Without slavery, they wouldn't. You know what I mean? Ron is over here flailing around. He's like, I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. That's like a classic racist trope And Trump would immediately deliver that, I feel like. Ron DeSantis is too much of a fucking liberal trying to implement fascist policies to be able to push that.
But to your point that there are similar standards in the AP African American Studies course, I looked at both. I read your standards and I read those as well. The line that you're talking about, it says, in some areas there were distinct roles separating domestic and agricultural laborers. In addition to agricultural work, enslaved people learned specialized skills, trades, and worked as painters, carpenters, tailors, musicians, healers in the South. Once free, African Americans used these skills to provide for themselves and others.
I think there was like 3 examples that actually suited that. Historians looked into it and found that there were like a sum total of, I believe, 3 examples of that actually happening. Every single example that they use in the textbook is wrong. And the only 3 that they found that were like maybe right is because it was questionable and there wasn't enough there wasn't enough evidence either way. A lot of these people that they used in the textbook, they didn't learn their skills during slavery, or some of them were not even ever slaves. They were born after. It's fucking bananas. Look, there you go. Black folks who were touted by Florida as benefiting from slavery weren't enslaved. Now, of course, the reason why I'm bringing this up is twofold. Like, this part of it doesn't even matter. Even if there were actual fucking slaves out there who learned skills because they were slaves, that still is not something that you can fucking put in a textbook to be like, well, it's like kind of justifiable. Like, yeah, they learned how to fucking pick cotton. Wow, it's so wonderful. Which they could translate to sharecropping later down the line. Like, that's an insane argument to make. You know what I mean? If you make that argument, you're a fucking psycho. Which, by the way, ironically, that is the argument that they are trying to make without saying that, for the record, just so people understand, because that's the overwhelming majority. The through line there is slavery, not all bad, maybe some good sides, right? That's an insane thing to say in and of itself, but it's also a historic. You're putting this in a fucking history textbook, and it's not even true. Black person here, in fact, they actually picked the type of slaves that they wanted because the slaves had special skills that white people could exploit. Yeah. It's fucking nuts. It's not even true, which, by the way, hasn't stopped these fucking assholes from, purposely and maliciously spreading false information time and time again about the real and accurate assessment of slavery and white supremacy in America. That is the whole point behind the anti-CRT arguments that they make. They're like, we want the Daughters of the Confederacy to write the textbooks. Anything that goes against that narrative is CRT and bullshit. It'll make our beautiful white babies feel guilty.
Looking at the AP course versus yours, the word enslaver appears dozens of times in the AP course. It doesn't appear once in your standards. And the criticism that I've seen beyond just that one sentence is the general framing of a slightly more positive light.
No, that's not true. I mean, there's all the gory details are in all of those standards. And in fact, since I've been governor, we've added to what type of African-American issue has been.
Yeah, real big brain ideas are actually thinking about the bright side of slavery. You know what I mean? Why can't you be a little bit more positive about the brutal history of slavery? Yeah, he added a lot to African-American issues, just the wrong shit. He's like, what do you mean? Look at how much we added to the discourse on African-American issues by just lying and saying idiotic bullshit.
And we got to focus on, what's best for students and what's best for parents. We believe protecting parents' rights, letting them direct the education, and we believe the education in the school should just simply be factual and it shouldn't have a political agenda. At the end of the day, the reason why they're coming after this is because we did take the critical race theory out.
I think the funniest part about this is, sure, you got the critical race theory out, right? Except now, this concept that was otherwise vague and weaponized towards anything and everything the Republicans thought was like woke, now has tangible boundaries. And those tangible boundaries are not favorable to you. Wokeness and CRT is not supposed to have any sort of serious boundaries. All of a sudden, in a spectacularly public blunder, you have made eliminating CRT synonymous with slavery had some positives. Before, no Republican can even mention what CRT is. But now Democrats can say, well, Ron DeSantis eliminated CRT and then wrote in the Florida education bill that eliminating CRT is basically saying slavery has some fucking real benefits. So congratulations on that part.
You literally will have situations where if these are like young kids, 6-year-old kid happens to be white, they're an oppressor. 6-year-old kid happens to be African American, that's there somehow oppressed. That's a horrible message to send to people.
Older children, middle school, high school, 17-year-olds.
To categorize people and to scapegoat them based on things that may have happened 100, 200 years ago is wrong. It is not going to help this country come together.
That's such an insane thing because, like, it quite literally extends to don't talk about slavery. Like, that goes even beyond the slavery had some benefits. That turns into, actually, let's not talk about slavery because, like, some random white people might feel uncomfortable about it. Bro, it happened. Like, what do you mean? You have to learn about it. The fuck? Which, by the way, of course, is the true purpose behind these sorts of initiatives, is to deny the historical atrocities that did actually happen, or at least whitewash it, or in some instances, just straight up write a new narrative that if it did happen, it was kind of good. There were benefits to it. Hold up.
Focus on the things that unite us, and let's de-emphasize some of the things that divide us. That is how I thought most people used to think was the aspiration. Now, things like critical race theory, what they're doing is they are trying to emphasize the things that divide, even if superficial, and they're de-emphasizing the things that unite us. We should be united that the founding principles of this country are our guiding light. The great things about American history are when people stood up and achieved recognition of that throughout history, whether it was after the Civil War and the 13th Amendment, whether it was the civil rights in the 60s and a whole host of other things, that have happened.
Yeah, why did half of those things happen? I wonder. Almost like the other thing that you don't want to mention created an environment where those things became an inevitability for progress to occur. For things for people to take for granted now. It's almost like you need to learn about the history so you understand why the civil rights movement exists, for example.
I think this is very much the live debate about, do you want the California model or do you want the Florida model? Biden basically would like to Californicate the United States.
No, I can't believe he said that. Felix is here, by the way. He said Californicate? Unacceptable. The worst thing I've ever heard. Hold on one second. I want to show you something immediately as we start. There's a matter that requires your attention. It's not it's Sugar Man moment, but it's pretty gross. I'm going to issue a trigger warning here for you. Your sensibilities will be assaulted. He did an exclusive with NBC News. I don't know if you saw it, where there was a big deal. He said, Trump lost. That's that, in the most like Hillary Rodham Clinton charisma you could ever have. He said a bunch of insane shit like he wants to kill every military-aged male that crosses the border with a satchel next to a baby. Straight up. That's not, I'm not even paraphrasing at this point.
And he looks like the groomer Wojak right there. On top of it all.
Yeah, he's so disfigured, but not even disfigured. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like, he makes me angry. His face invokes, his face is just so gross. I don't know how to describe it.
Right, there's no major problem. There's no like deformity, and it's not even like there I could probably name like 100,000 uglier politicians in America alone, but it's not ugliness or anything like that. It's just something about his face just immediately communicates.
He's not serving cunt.
Yeah.
He's not serving cunt.
He's taking it away.
Trump serves cunt. Even in his sweatiest moments, he's still serving cunt. He's off-putting. There's just something about it. I know it when I see it. There's just something so off-putting about the way he carries himself.
Any frame you freeze his face on, it looks terrible.
Yeah, it's really bad. Gross. Anyway, here's an absolute banger from Ron DeSantis that he came up with. He whipped this up.
Basically would like to Californicate the United States. Biden also.
That's what it. That's.
Ron DeSantis thought that dumbass shit was hot.
Yeah, he popped off on that.
That line was hot.
Yeah, but like, because he's so nervous all the time, like that nervousness, that anxiety just like exudes. It permeates through every orifice, and you can just like sense it, and it makes you naturally be disgusted with his behavior. Because he's so nervous, he couldn't even fucking like follow through with like a bet you like that, huh? Like one of those. Right. He just goes, Californication, like he's like trying to say it. He's just trying to say the words as quickly as possible and then move on.
Anyone else, even like, I don't know, Chris Christie, they do one of two things. They'd like let you sit with it, or like give some indication that they meant to do that. Yeah. But he's so uncomfortable in his own skin and self that I mean, it's like the same reason why any frame you freeze on with his face looks terrible. He is trying to get away from himself both verbally and physically.
Yeah, his face is trying to escape.
Yes.
He's trying to get out of his face. Have you seen the other Ron DeSantis stuff? Like,
I've seen every video where he has a beer in his hand. I've seen.
Oh yeah, this is a new one.
Pretty substantially behind. And you
Not here.
That's insane. Why is he doing
That's
that?
the fucking climax of Who Framed Roger Rabbit. He's
Why?
such a fucking tune. I've said it before, but he's tune. People say Homelander, but it's more tune from Roger Rabbit.
I agree with your assessment 100%. He looks like if he ever was like capable of being horny, his mouth would fall onto the ground and his tongue would roll out like the red carpet with like fucking, train horns coming out of his ears. It's crazy.
Here.
Like, what is that face? How does his mouth do that?
If he like fucking unhinges his jaw, his mouth becomes like half of his head. Like, it's fucking insane. I mean, like, I get the Homelander.
Have some decency.
That's so much of his tongue to.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if he was president. The world has seen 90% of his fucking tongue.
No, this is not decorum. You can't do that. You can't run for president and behave like this.
I mean, Homelander is like scary, but that's why those scenes are great. Anthony Starr is a brilliant actor, but what makes those scenes like tragic but tense and captivating is how terrifying Homelander is. Even if he didn't have superpowers, he'd be a terrifying guy. But this is like, I don't know, I guess it would be scary if you lived in Florida maybe, but like it's more whimsical, I would say, in a bad way.
Yeah, he never comes across he never reads as scary or an intimidating man ever, even if he's desperately trying to play that role. It's always you're just like angry at him, but not because of the policies that he's pushing for or anything like that, or the cruelty that he's like defending. It's more so just like, I'm annoyed by your face. You're such a fucking nuisance. You're such a nervous wreck all the time, and you conduct yourself in a horrible fashion.
If it's scary in the way that a fever dream is. Like it's scary in that it's like it's similar to like how a real person would behave or act, but it's an uncanny valley type thing.